Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to get started here just momentarily. To grab a snack or beverage in the back. Feel free to do so. But thank you, everyone, for being here. Happy first day back after fall break. I see some students here in the audience who got to go home and do something fun for fall break. Yeah, I just heard there was some eclipse viewing that was happening and other fun activities. Hopefully some rest and relaxation as well. Well, good. We're gonna go ahead and jump into things. I am Braylon Pantel, for those who I don't know yet. I am the Vice President of Student Life here at Mines, and I am thrilled to introduce our speaker this afternoon. Kerry Siggins is a CEO, she's a speaker, as evidenced by today's talk, an author, an advisor, a board member. She is an employee ownership expert, which I think we'll be hearing about today. And she is, last but certainly not least, a Colorado School of Mines alum. Kerry is going to share a little bit of her story with us directly, but I want to name just how special it is that she is with us here today, back on campus, and sharing her story. Kerry has had a tremendous career, and she has an incredibly powerful story as well. And much of that, as she'll share with us, stemmed from her experience here at Mines. Kerry was a student athlete at Mines. Where are my student athletes at? All right, thank you. Wonderful presence. And she is connected today to our athletics program as well, right? That connection to athletics and to Mines has not wavered. She is supporting our softball program as a lead donor on our current campaign to upgrade our facilities. So we are really, really grateful for her leadership in that space. Kerry gets and understands the importance of the student experience, particularly as it relates to the opportunities to learn how to lead and learn how to be a team player. She gets it. So we're grateful to have her with us today. Kerry is the CEO of Stone Age, which is a fast-growing manufacturing and tech company here based in Colorado. She has been named one of the most influential CEOs in 2021. And she was a finalist for Colorado's CEO of the Year in 2017. Kerry also transitioned Stone Age to become 100% employee-owned. And in the process, the company won numerous awards, including Outside Magazine's Best Places to Work, which is pretty cool. Kerry's advice and ownership mindset is through a blueprint for empowering employees and employers to reach their full potential. And what we're going to hear about today, because she just wrote a book entitled The Ownership Mindset, a handbook for transforming your life and leadership. Kerry's journey and experience truly have the ability to inspire others. She's here to share that journey with us today, and for that, I'm incredibly grateful. Kerry, thank you for being with us today. Let's give her a big round of applause.
Busy day, I know. Especially for the students here, but that is not always easy to do. I have to be honest, I don't know if I would have come and listened to a speaker when I was at school here, so I really, really appreciate you all being here. So I grew up in Colorado. I grew up on the western slope of Montrose, a little town. Montrose in here? Yay! Nice. I spent my whole life trying to get out of Montrose. I could not wait to move to the big city. I always saw myself as a city girl. And I went to Mines. I decided to come to Mines, not because I had this burning passion to be an engineer. I didn't actually even really fully understand what engineers did. I had a calculus teacher who said, "You're really great at math and science. You know, we need more women in engineering careers." This was before STEM. We didn't have really that language. And so she was always pushing me to go there, and I kind of blew her off. But then I got into some trouble. So I have a little bit of a troublemaker. I love to push boundaries. I still do, only I try to do it in much healthier ways than I did back then. And my mom said to me after getting into some serious trouble at school, "When you're 18, you are out of this house. I don't care what you do, but you're leaving. I don't care if you work at Walmart for the rest of your life. You are not living here." And I was stunned. "You don't think I'm going to college?" And so I said, "I'm going to college." She said, "What would make me think you're going to do that? You don't need to go to school now. Why would I think that you're going to college?" And so at that moment, I decided that I was going to listen to that teacher who said, if you go to School of Mines, you'll be really successful. And I put my head down, got my act together, and eventually got into mines. I also decided I wanted to play softball. I was a student athlete all through high school, and so I called the softball coach, Michelle Harris, who was the coach at the time, and I said, I really want to come and play softball there. And she said, if you can get in, I will give you a scholarship after coming to watch me play. And so I called her up when I got my acceptance letter, and I got a softball scholarship. And I had no idea how important that having that scholarship and being a student athlete would be to me surviving fines. And as many of you know, sometimes it does feel like you are surviving here. It's tough. And it was even tougher back then. We didn't have the resources that many of you have access to. In fact, and I know they don't do this anymore, but on my orientation weekend, we sat in a room similar to this. I don't remember what building it was in. And they said, look to the left of you, look to the right of you. 2 of you will not be here when you graduate. Right? Imagine that kind of pressure that you feel when you're like, well, it's gonna be you two, right? Because I'm gonna make it here. And so it was really difficult to figure out how to find that place here. And luckily I have a softball team, and being able to go to practice every day, to be able to blow off steam, to be able to have a close-knit group of friends, to be able to do something that I love, moving my body every day, it made it worthwhile staying here. My sophomore year though, I was confident I did not want to be an engineer. And I was also determined not to quit. I had my dad's voice in the back of my head. My dad was an absentee father. He left when I was 4. And whenever I would see him, he was in and out of my life, he would be really mean. And he's so excited to see him. And then he would yell at us and be angry with us. And he would say things to me like, that was a really stupid decision. Why did you do that? You're so stupid. Or he would try to catch me in the pantry eating a Twinkie. I don't even know if they make Twinkies anymore. Eating a Twinkie. And they'd say, don't eat that. That's just going to make you fatter than you already are. And so I had a lot of self-confidence issues. When I told him that I was going to mines, he said, you're not smart enough to go to mines. You're not smart enough to graduate from engineering school. Why don't you go to journalism school? You're a great writer. Full circle, I now have a book. So maybe he was on something then, but I was not about to give him any credit for that. I was going to make it through mines. But when you do that, you do it for the wrong reasons, right? I was staying here for somebody else. I wasn't staying here because I had this passion to be an engineer. In fact, I knew I didn't want to be an engineer, but I was determined to prove my dad wrong. I was determined to prove all those kids in high school who said I would never make it here wrong. And I remember really struggling with mental health. Like, we didn't talk about mental health like we do now, right? That pressure of knowing that a lot of the students who I started my freshman year with weren't going to make it, put pressure on. I had incredible test anxiety. In fact, I would do really, really well in all my classes, and then I would go take a test and I would fail. And I'm sure many of you deal with that. And I had never heard of the word test anxiety until I finally went to one of my professors, Candy Doherty, who was amazing. It was my mechanics and materials class, and our professor, and she said, I think you have test anxiety. Let's talk about how to help you. And that was huge for me because she gave me skills to be able to manage the stress that I felt when I was taking tests. And I learned a lot about advocating for myself, right? For saying, I need a little bit of help here. And luckily I had a professor who I could trust, who I could relate to be able to say, I get really scared every time I come in and take a test. I think I'm going to fail. And you know what makes it worse? That all my classmates, and you get the test back, I don't know if they do that now, it might all be electronic, but we would actually get our test back and, you know, big red marker what your score was. And I remember a physics test, I got a 32 and I was like, no one can see that. And everybody's like this, you know, looking to see who got. And then the person who, you know, got a 90, which how did that even happen? You know, is like up there talking about it. And all it did is just compound this feeling of like, do I actually belong here? Am I smart enough to graduate here? And it was really, really tough. I also had a great professor in the economics program. And I was talking to him one day about what I wanted to do. And he said, you know, you don't have to leave mines. You can come into the business program and maybe that would set you up for more about what you would like. And I couldn't even imagine doing that, right? I came to school of mines to get an engineering degree. How can I do a business economics degree? But I was so grateful for him because he gave me a different path forward. And it was so scary to make that change to say, no, I'm going to leave engineering behind and, you know, I'll do general engineering, but I'm going to focus on business and I'm going to risk feeling shame for not sticking with my mechanical engineering program. I was chemical first and then took organic. I was like, oh, I did not get organic chemistry. And I really had to deal with a lot of those feelings of inadequacy and feeling like people would judge me because I was making a change that was really much more beneficial for myself and for my future, but felt like a humongous decision to make. But I was determined to stay here. After I graduated though, I was completely lost. I spent 4 years here putting my head down, trying to figure out how to just get through. Play softball, support my team. I worked 3 jobs. And I had no idea who I was. I had no idea who Kerry was at that time. What I really wanted, I was so busy trying to live my life for other people that I didn't actually ever take the time to stop and say, what life do I want to live for myself? And that combined with body image issues and feeling inadequate led me to substance abuse issues. And in a matter of 6 months, my life completely spiraled. 1 year after graduating, I was a complete wreck and I had to leave Colorado. I remember calling my mom, that was the first time I called her about my drug problem, and I said, I need to leave. I want to get out of Colorado. I've lived here my whole life. I need to go figure out who I am. So I decided to move to Austin, Texas. And she says to me, I support you, but are you sure that moving closer to the border when you have a drug problem is a good idea? Like, are you sure this is really what you want to do? And I was like, yes, Mom, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go start. And so she said, okay, you know, I don't know that you should leave. I don't know that you should move far away from home, your roots, but if that's what you feel like you should do, go do it. So I moved to Austin and my drug problem did not cease. In fact, it got worse, up and down like this. Now, because I'm a hard worker, I got through mines, playing softball, working 3 jobs, I know how to work. And so I lived this dual life of building my career, trying to portray this image of success, but living this double life where every night, every weekend, I would go out and use substances to numb this really feeling of inadequacy and a sense of like not belonging, not really understanding what my place was in the world. But I never stopped to actually just say, what's going on inside? I never stopped to say, am I truly taking responsibility for my situation? Am I taking responsibility for understanding who I am as a person and what gifts I have to be able to give to the world? No, it was work, 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 party, party, party. And in 2006, it all came crashing down. And on Labor Day, I overdosed accidentally, combining too many substances together. And I should have died. In fact, I don't know how I didn't die. There's a reason, whether you believe in the universe, God, creator source, there is a purpose for me living here. I woke up on the floor. My breathing was incredibly shallow. In fact, I was hardly breathing, but my heart was racing. It was like I was shocked alive by the universe. I knew instantly what was happening. And immediately I said to myself, no one can see you like this. No one. How can you have lived this, put on this facade of being successful, climbing corporate ladder, and literally being on the floor of your apartment, about to die? And so I said, all right, if I'm going to die, I'm not going to die on the floor of my apartment because that does not mean dignity. At least I can die in bed. And so I forced myself to get up, get into bed. And I couldn't get out for 3 days. And it wasn't the fact that I almost died that made me decide I wanted to change my life. It was the fact that I couldn't go to work for 3 days. And it was the fact that even though I had hundreds of friends, if not 1,000 people that I knew in Austin, no one called to check on me. They just figured, oh, she must be at work. We'll see her when we see her. What is that? Like, what an empty existence. Can't go to work, which is how I have built my whole persona in my head. And I don't have anybody calling to see where I am. This is a fake life. On that third day, I got out of bed and I took a shower and looked in the mirror. I finally was honest with myself. This is not real. But you can do this. You've done so many hard things in your life. You can do this. I was not going to give up on myself. Even though I could have. I could have gone down a whole different path. I was on the train to not good places. So once again, I picked up the phone and I called my mother. My poor mom. She is amazing. I would not be here without her, not just because she gave birth to me, but because she has supported me, even though I have hurt her so many times. There's been countless nights where I know that she was awake, wondering, is my daughter going to live? What choices is she going to make? Is she going to get hurt? Is she going to get thrown in jail? Is she going to overdose? And I told her everything that happened. And I said, Mom, I need to come home. I know that I have so much more potential than what I'm living up to. And I'm so tired of living this way. And she said something really powerful to me in that moment, because she had been listening to me lament about my unhappiness, and she'd been listening to me blame other people, blame my dad, blame the boss that I didn't like. And she said to me, you can come home, but I'm going to tell you this. You have to learn how to lead yourself. You have to lead yourself before you can lead other people. And you are a leader, and you can lead people to some really great places, and you can lead people right off that cliff with you. What kind of leader do you want to be? And it starts with self-leadership. And she said to me, you have to start taking personal responsibility. You have to take responsibility for every single thing in your life, because you are in this situation because you put yourself there, not anybody else. Those are really, really tough words to hear, right? You put yourself in this situation. You need to start taking responsibility. She was right. I had no choice but to say yes, even though those were not the words I wanted to hear, right? I wanted to get defensive and tell her like she's wrong and it is everybody else's fault. But in that moment, I realized that all those years that I've been doing that, got me to this place and I was miserable. I didn't want to be here anymore. So maybe, just maybe, I needed to do something different. So I said, yes, of course, Mom. I will start working on self-leadership, even though I have no idea what that actually means. And 6 weeks later, I packed up all of my belongings from Austin and I drove 1,000 miles to Durango, where I live now. Whole time oscillating between excitement and tears of like, what am I doing? What am I going to do when I get to Durango? Here I am, 28 years old. I spent my whole life trying to get off of the western slope of Colorado, and I'm going back to live with my mom. I have no job. I had gotten myself into about $100,000 worth of debt because I lived a fake life where I shopped too much and I drove a car I couldn't afford, and I lived in an apartment in downtown Austin that I couldn't afford, all just to make people think it's not success. As soon as I got to Durango on November 4th, 2006, and my mom came walking down the stairs. Sorry, I get emotional whenever I tell this part story. My mom comes walking down those stairs and she comes over and she hugs me. And for the first time in years, in a decade, I felt like I belonged. I was back where I was supposed to be. Somebody who loved me, and someone who didn't care about all of those things, but someone who just wanted me to be me, whoever that was. I was so relieved to be home. That all of those stories I told myself about how awful it was going to be back in a little town in western Colorado melted away. I spent that first week just settling in. I spent the second week coming up with a plan. Now I'm here. What am I going to do? So I started applying for jobs. And I started this path of deep exploration. Why do I make the decisions I make? Why do I care so much about what people think of me? Why am I living my life for other people? And that is how this whole journey, the ownership mindset, started. I started taking responsibility for my life. I knew I couldn't blame anybody else anymore. In the meantime, as I'm applying for jobs, I come across One for Stone Age. It's a little manufacturing company started by a mines graduate and a former research assistant in the mining department here at Mines. And I thought, you know, I've never managed people before, I've never managed a company before, but I've done all these things. After I graduated, I got into manufacturing operations, and that's why I found my love of the complex world of manufacturing and people management. So I said, you know what? I'm going to bet on myself. I am going to apply for this job. And even if I don't get it, perhaps it's my foot in the door for something else. And quite frankly, there was a little bit of desperation. I mean, I was not being very discerning about the jobs I was applying for. It's Durango, Colorado in 2006. There's not a lot of good jobs in this community. So when I got the call coming for an interview, I was shocked. I met the two founders and they asked me all kinds of questions. And I had to steel myself against lying, right? Against putting on this facade. Like there is no facade. I'm 28 years old. I've never run a company before. Right? There's no way I can tell these two gentlemen that I somehow know what I'm doing, because I don't. So I would answer the questions to the best of my ability and say, I don't know how to do that. I've never done that before, but here's how I would think through it. And I said that ad nauseum. In fact, I was confident when I left, there was no way they were going to call me back. But they did. I met with the management team and they decided to take this massive risk and hire me to take over their company. You know what got me into that room for that first interview? What got me that job? Colorado School of Mines. There is no way that they would have looked at my resume, my inexperience, and said, huh, she can do this. I wouldn't have gone to school here. In fact, Jerry Zink, who's the Mines graduate, he did his undergraduate and master's here, just did a opening talk for my inaugural book launch event. And he said, I knew when I saw that she was a student athlete at Mines, that she had the gumption and that we should talk to her, at least talk to her, because he knew how hard it was to graduate from a school like this. And so all those years I spent questioning why I came here, especially when I didn't want to be an engineer, with all of the issues that I had, not because of this place, but because of the choices I made while I was here. So grateful that I did it. This place has changed my life. It just took me a decade and a half to figure that out. Joan Age is an employee-owned company. John and Jerry decided to sell stock to the employees starting in the 90s, well before I came on board. It was a really interesting culture. One like I had never been a part of. Not that I had only been working in the real world for about 6 years, but I was used to corporate America. And when the founder of the company would say to me, when I would ask him his opinion on something, I don't know. I'm more interested in what you think. What do you think we should do? I trust you to make this decision. In fact, I don't even agree with one of these things that you want to do, but I'm going to let you try it. He taught me how to think and act like an owner. Not intentionally. He wanted to go do something else. My success was going to directly translate to his success. But it was so empowering to have this person who I respected, who was my boss, truly be interested in what I thought, especially as a 28-year-old druggie. He did not know that at the time. 3 years from starting at Mines as a director of operations, then moving into general manager, the company named me CEO. And it was almost exactly 3 years from the day that I moved to Durango. And I thought back to those 3 years. Like, how did I go from the floor of my apartment, almost dying, half wishing I would die, half saying there's no way in hell I'm going to die, to now running this really cool company, changes the industry, it's going to change the world. And I realized there's 3 things. One, I never gave up on myself. Even in those darkest moments, even when I was laying on the floor of my apartment, and I could have given up, I didn't. Even though I was so scared to pack up my life and move back to a place I said I don't want to be, but my heart was telling me I needed to be there, I did it. I didn't give up on myself. When I looked at that job description that said there is no way I'm qualified to do this job, I didn't give up on myself. I put myself out there and I did it. I didn't give up on myself. The second thing I learned is what happens when you trust. What happens when you're given trust? John and Jerry trusting me, asking my opinion, caring about what I thought, giving me rope, not to hang myself, but enough to learn, was so empowering. It was so incredibly empowering. And I learned that self-reflection, doing the hard work of understanding who I am, why I made the decisions that I made, even though it was really hard to look in the mirror at those parts of myself that I hated, felt so much shame about, doing that gave me the power to change my life. And I said, I want everybody to be able, that works for me, to be able to experience the same sort of transformation that I have. How do I help them learn how to not give up on themselves? How do I help them learn how to trust their own decision-making, how to give them autonomy and authority to live their lives, to go after their dreams, to be able to have control over their work? How do I help them understand that self-reflection is the most powerful tool? Even when you're looking are parts of yourself you do not want to see, that you do not want to admit to, you want to hide. And that is where the beginning of the ownership mindset came. Really, the ownership mindset is simple. It is the belief, the conviction that every single thing that happens to you is because of you. It is this idea that you are personally responsible for your life. And even though bad things happen that are not your fault, you still have the power to choose how you respond to them. You have the power to say, am I going to let this take me down, make me feel insecure, make me shrink, make me hide? Or am I going to overcome that adversity, to learn from it, to become a stronger, better person because of it? That is what the ownership mindset is. And every single one of us have the power to have it. And when you do, you change your life. You do not need to wait for someone to empower you to do something. When you own it, you empower yourself. Because I owned it, because I said, I am not going to live this life anymore. I changed my life. Because even I said, I'm really, really scared of putting myself out there to go for this job. Because what happens if I'm rejected? I owned it. And I changed my life. Even though it was so hard to go into an interview with these two brilliant men who I so badly wanted to work for and say, I don't know how to do that. I've never done it before, but here's how I would think about it. Here's my thought process. Owning it. And those answers, even though they felt incredibly uncomfortable to me, changed my life. This journey has been incredible. Starting was an $8 million company when I took it over. We'll do well over $100 million this year. We are global, offices all over the world. I have traveled the world. I have had the privilege of working with some of the most brilliant, talented people, of meeting amazing people. And none of it would have happened. I wouldn't have overcome that adversity. If I wouldn't have screwed up in high school and have my mom basically tell me that she thought I was a loser to get to hear mines, for having my dad tell me I wasn't smart enough to graduate from here, and how bad that made me feel and forced me to stay out here, I wouldn't have done that. I would not have had my overdose. In fact, somebody asked me the other day, we were in a forum session, what's one day that you take back in your life? And I said, I'm gonna give a lean answer, none. Because even on my hardest days, it taught me something. And a friend of mine said to me, it wouldn't have been the day that you overdosed. And I said, are you kidding? That's the day I am most grateful for in my life because it made me change my life. It's a huge inflection for me. Got me to Durango. It got me to Stonehenge to live this life. That is amazing. I know that many of you in here might not be thinking about legacy. Maybe many of you are, some of you are. It's a really important thing. And that's what I wanted to leave behind. Not just my legacy, but John and Jerry's, a little bit of mine's, a little bit of mantras. But leave this legacy of empowerment. And not something that is gifted to you or bestowed upon you, but empowerment of yourself. How do I create the life that I want to live? Because when you do that, you change your family, change your community, and you can change the world. And so that's why I wrote this book, in hopes that it inspires people to take a deep look within, to step into the responsibility and the power and the commitment and the difficulty of owning everything that happens in your life. When you do it, you can change your life. I'm living proof of that. It's hard work. It's really hard work. There's been times when I'm like, I don't want to do this work anymore. Every day when you get up and you see that you're changing your life for the better, see that you're changing your teammates' life for the better, company, your industry, potentially the world. That is a life worth living. So I implore you all to consider what personal responsibility means to you. The opposite of responsibility is not your responsibility. And I know a lot about your responsibility. It's blame. Blame. When you're not owning it, you're blaming. And when you blame, you step into being a victim. When you are a victim, you can't change. And anybody can change at any time, any situation, if you want it. I really want to thank you all for coming today to listen to my story, to hopefully read this book and hope it has a tidbit or a nugget that you can take away and empower yourself. It's part memoir, it's part leadership, it's part how to build a really great company. And it's about legacy. What do you want to leave behind? What kind of impact do you want to make on the world? Because that's why we're all here, make an impact in our little sliver of the world. So thank you. I do believe we're going to take questions, and I really, really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Oh, yes, thank you, Kerry. That was incredible. That was really, really powerful. And so folks, we have a mic up here, and I believe there may be another one floating out there somewhere. I would love to hear what questions may be on the minds of those in the audience, students in particular. I guess while I'll give you a moment to think about that, I'll toss one out here to Kerry to get us going. And I know we do have a lot of folks here in the audience who are thinking about entering the workforce. They're thinking about that first opportunity after graduation. And in reflecting on some of your comments and the importance of kind of that leadership mindset, how do you as an employer, as you're engaging with potential employees, how do you gauge who has that? Or is it something that they have innately, or do you teach it? And if so, how so?
Yeah. So it's really hard to teach somebody accountability. In fact, there's all kinds of studies that say that once we're fully formed adults, that if we are not accountable, there's a good chance we're not going to be. So we ask a lot of questions around accountability, and tell me a story about a really big mistake that you made. Tell us a story about a relationship that you damaged. And we're less concerned about the actual story and more interested to hear if a person takes responsibility for what happened. And that's really awkward in a job interview because I want to put our best foot forward, and we don't want to talk about our mistakes or the things that we've really screwed up. But that's what leaders, at least leaders, at Stone Age, we want to hear. And if we hear how it's somebody else's fault, or it somehow gets kind of twisted into not owning it, then those are the types of people that we decide not to hire. But on the other part of your question, do you teach people? Yes, we teach people about how to think and act like an owner, just like John and Jerry taught me how to think and act like an owner. A lot of people don't go into the workforce going, okay, yes, I want to think like an owner. I want to act like an owner. In fact, a lot of companies, you're not even encouraged to do that. A lot of companies just put your head down, do what you're told. We're not interested in hearing about mistakes or how to improve processes or what's going on wrong within the company. And so a lot of people come in with that kind of baggage. And so you have to unwind this whole idea that blaming other people is how you get ahead, or blaming situations is how you get ahead. And so if we hear accountability in a person, but they don't come in with that full ownership mindset, then absolutely we help people embrace it. But not everybody likes this type of, vulnerability and self-awareness that's required to having this kind of mindset.
Thank you. I want that big question as well, right? It feels a little scary. It's wait a second, I came in here to tell you about all the wonderful things that I've done and all my successes, and now you want me to tell you about my failures? Yes.
You know, and here's another thing for those of you going out for interviewing, and I learned this mostly because when I started at Stone Age, obviously I didn't have industry experience and I didn't have managing a company experience. So I couldn't come in and say I was hired for a reason, which a lot of people do. They come in and I'm going to prove that it was worth hiring me. And so instead, I just asked a lot of questions like, well, how would you fix this problem? Or, give me the background so I can help understand it. And if you were me, what would you do? And so that really helped me build relationships because it wasn't me coming in and trying to change the situation. It was me bringing the team together and saying, how should we do this together? And so I think that's a really important one is to understand that you don't have to have all the answers. And you don't have to be the person who knows everything. And most of your colleagues really want you to ask their opinion and they want you to try to fit in with the team versus just come in and prove yourself. So that's a big one. Understand the culture and understand how you can be a great teammate and you will do a much better job, getting integrated into the culture than worrying so much about the actual task at hand. Which seems counterintuitive, right? You're hired for a reason, but let's face it, we all want people who we like and who like us. So, figuring out the culture and how you can be a great teammate, I think is the first thing that you should do when you come into a new company.
Here. Wonderful. What questions do you all have? And go ahead, we've got some folks on Zoom, so if you don't mind grabbing a mic so that everyone can hear, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
This work. Yeah. So I have two questions. Number one, basically like props, right? Could you speak a little bit about what the process was like of living this double life and hiding it from all the corporate engineering, types? And then the second one is just, what was the process like of quitting? Did you quit cold turkey and yeah, how did you get through that?
Great question. It's very difficult to live a dual life and you have to be really good at faking it. And luckily that's probably wrong, but I have the ability to do that. I am really, really tough. So no matter how bad I felt, I always went to work. And it's amazing what makeup can do too. And so put on makeup, look in the mirror, suck it up and just do it. And so because I had such a strong work ethic and fortitude that I could power through feeling really horrible and physically and also about myself. My first boss also had addiction issues. He was addicted to Oxycontin before Oxycontin was the thing. And so I don't think he was actually really paying that much attention. In fact, my very first boss in Denver, he knew I was struggling and I've talked to him about it years later and he said, I so badly wanted to talk to you about it, but it just felt inappropriate. It felt inappropriate for a boss to say, are you struggling with something? Are you using substances? And I so wish that he would have asked me because, having that person who I looked up to, it might have been really helpful for me, but it's a really awkward position to be in. So I really chalk it up to my work ethic. You're just going to go out there and make it happen, even if you feel bad. So the second question, I was determined not to go to rehab. I knew if I wasn't what rehab does, it teaches you a lot of things, but it also removes you from the situation. And I did a lot of research in those 6 weeks after coming to Colorado. And I really realized that I needed to remove myself from that situation. And that if I just went to rehab and went back to Austin, that I didn't know if I had the willpower. And now I know a lot about willpower and we don't have much of it. And we shouldn't rely on it. I would just put myself back in that same situation. So I needed to remove myself. But it took me 2 years to get fully clean. I definitely had relapses and not bad, but certainly wasn't like, it wasn't easy. But I was determined to do it on my own. And I did that because I was at home with my mom. And I also had my job at Stone Age. It was a new chance at life. And I was determined to not go down that same path. But it was a couple of years. It was like October 2008 on my 30th birthday was the last time I ever did any hardcore drugs. So it was a process. So she asked, how did I overcome self-confidence issues? Again, a process. It was, the first step was really starting to understand myself. I really needed to go to therapy, but I had no money and my mom had no money. And so a friend of mine was like, well, maybe you should do personality assessments because they're free online. And that was really powerful for me because I didn't understand myself very deeply. And so having the tools to be able to look at myself and understand who I was, that helped me be able to start making different decisions for myself. And that is really the only way for me, the only way to deal with self-confidence issues is to take a different action, right? So, I made this decision for this and I don't like what it's getting me. I'm going to try something new. And when I would try something new and be like, oh, okay, I learned here, that helps me get a little bit more confidence. So I take that next step. I think a lot of times when we have self-confidence issues, we don't take action, right? We give ourselves all kinds of reasons why we shouldn't do that, why we can't do it, how we're going to fail. And so inaction actually leaves us feeling stuck. And so I was at rock bottom. Like I only had either die or go up, and that's how I looked at it. So I started to just say, I'm going to put myself out of my comfort zone a little bit, and I'm going to try something. And over a year's time, I started to gain a lot more confidence because I realized that even if I did make a bad decision, like I would survive, and even if someone didn't like me, like I'd be okay. And it was that action that really helped. But it was just over small little steps over time to rebuild that. Body image was a big part of it, right? I had to look really, and to be honest, it's still there. I think it's there for many of us, men and women, where we don't like our bodies. And that was a big struggle for me. I'm much, much better about it, but it's still there in the back of my mind. God, I'm gonna get on stage and there you go, I'm gonna think I'm fat, right? Like that literally thought like comes into my head when I walk up the stage. And then, I tell myself like, that doesn't matter. It does not matter what I look like. What matters is the impact, the story, and those things. So it still plagues me, even though I've been working on this for the last 17 years. Always take action though. And remember what's important. Great.
Thank you, Kerry. I think we'll take maybe one more question because I know that students have to run to class and we've got books for folks as well. And I want to make sure we think, Kerry, let's do one more question and then we'll wrap things up in the back.
I don't mind. This was awesome. Thanks so much for sharing and being vulnerable. How do you do? I'm gonna kind of combine two questions. How do you deal with shame, guilt, negative thoughts, and being past and then imposter syndrome of being there's trouble. There's any.
Yeah. So how do you deal with shame? That's such a good question. And it is, shame is, I think, the worst possible feeling that you can have, because it really does keep you locked in a space where you don't want to be locked into, whether that's shame that you feel yourself or shame that other people, make you feel and or put on you as well. So how I have dealt with shame over this last 17 years is a lot of self-reflection and a lot of meditation and really trying to get comfortable with who I am. I don't feel shame anymore for the decisions I make. I feel regret for the people I hurt. And that's the work that I had to be able to let go of, is to say, what is shame going to get me? Shame is going to keep me in this same place that I don't want to be. So how can I can feel regret, I can feel sorrow for the decisions I made and how I made people feel, how I treated people, but I'm going to not let myself feel shame. And that comes with self-forgiveness, which you can't do unless you do the work. And I really started doing that work. I hired a life coach, and she was the one who helped me be able to process the shame that I felt, so that I could just say, I regret that now, rather than I feel shame for it. And that only happens when you do the work, when you start to understand why you made it, the decisions you made, and then or why you have the trauma, how to deal with that trauma, and let go of that shame. And whenever it rears its ugly head, which it does, and I take a deep breath and I remember I am not my shame, and I can regret that, but I do not have to feel shame for it. Imposter syndrome. Oh my gosh, like so much imposter syndrome. In fact, I even felt a little bit of it, like launching this book of like, why would anybody read this? What, do I really deserve to even like have it out here? And that is literally, I think, trauma and society, telling, right, that you then start to like believe that you should have a place at the table. And so I will just identify it, like that is imposter syndrome, and imposter syndrome is not going to give me what I want, right? I want impact. And if I play it small, if I say I don't have a seat here and that makes me make a different decision, then I'm not going to make an impact. So I always just try to tie it back to the bigger picture of what I want to achieve. Imposter syndrome is just fear. And, when you're doing something big and you feel fear, right, that means that you're about to do something that's really big, that's really important. And so I just think identifying it, and then again, take that action. How do I take the action to make this happen? How do I tie it to the dream I want to go after, the impact that I want to make? And that's what helps me be able to, get over it. But yeah, I was like having like a little bit, I was like, not like, I don't have panic attacks, but I was like feeling really nervous on Monday and going, this feels like imposter syndrome again. And it's like, nope, just get out there and just do it. And you know what? If some people don't like the book, that's okay. It doesn't matter. You wrote a book. Not a lot of people do that, and it's okay. If you're feeling nervous about it, but just take that action and make it happen.
Thank you. I love that, and that idea of focusing on the impact, because that impact is this conversation, right? That impact is all that you have to offer to the world through your book.
Well, and make you not think about yourself, right? When I'm like, okay, I want to make an impact. Like I want to take away the stigma around substance use. That's a really important part of why I tell this story. So often we feel shame, we feel like we don't belong, and that just continues that spiral. And so it can feel, I was in the newspaper, the Durango Herald last week, they pulled from my book, I didn't do this in the interview, but it said, she can do more cocaine than a 230-pound man, which is in my book. And I was like, God, they like, I feel so uncomfortable that is like on the front page of my hometown newspaper. And I know that like, that's what they do. Like they want to sensationalize it. Just like, oh my God, I cannot believe that I am doing this. And you know what? When I'm in that moment, I'm focused on myself. And then when I remember I'm doing this because I want to reduce the stigma around substance abuse, and I want people to believe that they can change their lives, then if it means more people read the book or read the article and they change their life because of it, then that's what the purpose is. And so it helps you take it off of yourself, that feeling that, where you feel like all the spotlight's on you and you put the spotlight on somebody else, then you're like, I can do that. I can do this if it saves one person's life. If it helps one person say, I can change my life, it's worth having the Durango Herald say that I used to be able to do more cocaine than to.
Thank you. And thank you truly for being here and being so human with all of us. I think really it's just wonderful and refreshing and empowering to hear your story, but also to be able to hear you elaborate a little bit more on some of the things and for the great questions. I want to ask everyone to join me in thanking Kerry. We have a little something for her. Recognition and appreciation and celebration of her fabulous book launch.
Perfect spot in my office.
Yeah. Should be offered to read the book and learn more that way, and hopefully we'll see Kerry back on campus. I know we'll see Kerry back on campus because she is an Oregoner for life, as evidenced by all of her work and her tremendous support of our programs and ongoing support of softball and the institution. So thank you for being here. Thank you all for joining us. Students, I believe some of you have a little special ticket, which is your ticket to a book. And I think Kerry's going to stick around for just maybe a little bit. And if you do have any lingering questions or want to get her to sign your book, she's here for that. So
Thank you all.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Proud to be in Oregon.